So Cenk and Anna of the Young Turks had a very heated debate the other day. The title here is Cenk and Anna Debate How to Talk to Right Wingers. So look, I want to go through all 23 minutes of this, but you know, we don't have the time and there's so many other stories to get to. So I picked like the juiciest part and we're going to react to the juiciest part here. But I will tell you this. So the genesis of this debate was Cenk saying the line, Republicans love criminals. Now, it was in the context of talking about Trump and like how Trump's numbers have gone up since, you know, it was announced that he's probably going to be indicted and arrested and prosecuted. And so he uses that to then argue Republicans love criminals. And Anna took issue with that because from her perspective, she's saying, look, that's a gross generalization. It's hyperbolic on purpose. And what you're doing is going after rank and file Republican voters whose minds can be changed, and you're just alienating them and pushing them further away from the left when you make arguments like that. And her point was, hey man, go after Republican elites like the politicians and, you know, try to be more constructive when criticizing the actual voters, the base. Okay, so that's the background story. Now that had happened on a previous show, and then they decided, let's do another segment where we sort of debate this topic on the next show. And so that's where we are here. We're about 13 minutes and 30 seconds into the debate, and we'll watch the rest and react to it.
Democratic establishment in San Francisco endorsing this guy, one could argue, right? I would say it's inaccurate. One could argue the left loves crime, but the left doesn't love crime.
No, but all right. So just to brush you up on the point she's making here, she's saying, hey, Cenk, that generalization you made about Republican voters, you can make the same generalization about Democratic voters, because here's some DA who was dismissive of the fact that some local reporter was robbed and was very smug about it. And Anna's like, so if we want to generalize about Democrats now, Democratic voters, you could say, you know, the left loves crime. Is that fair? So that's the point she's making.
That is a mischaracterization.
But those leftists there, I think, are extreme. And yeah, they think crime is not that big a deal. They say it all the time.
Representative of all left-wing voters.
Of course not, but that's my point.
So I just, look, all I'm asking for is specificity, right? And I'm also asking for, you know, just stay away from hyperbole and needlessly making blanket statements about whole swaths of the population.
No, but Anna, so
that's the problem I have.
We're not getting to the heart of the problem. So
okay.
Look, the Republicans, generally speaking, and not just generally speaking, I give you specific examples, are the aggressors, right? So we didn't just pass hundreds of laws against straight people in the country. They just passed hundreds of laws.
The politicians, and we should fight them, Cenk.
Do you think the Republican voters are against those laws? Be honest.
Cenk, I mean, what do they hear? Constant libs of TikTok, constant propaganda that's meant to scare them about the others. You know this.
I know, but Anna, so what do we do? Because we can't just go, okay, hey, you know what? Let's throw gay people under the bus.
That is not what I'm suggesting.
I know you're not suggesting that. So I'm asking, what do we do?
Okay, so do you think that you persuade them by saying, you guys are stupid, you guys love crime, you guys are hateful, ordinary people? Are you persuading them, or are you just releasing, the emotional frustration that I also feel myself?
No, this is super important, and this is a good question, and it has a very good answer. So we're in a political battlefield. We have to win on these elections so we can win on the bills, because they're winning the elections and winning the bills, and they're actually passing laws saying that gay people are so evil we can't have innocent kids hear about their existence, okay?
Right.
So I cannot let that stand. So how do you win? You win by winning the middle, okay? So that's why sometimes when the left goes extreme, that doesn't help winning the middle. Okay, and you have to look at the polling to see what people actually want. They defunded the police. You poll it in African-American neighborhoods, and it polls terribly. Don't tell me that they want it when they don't want it. That's what you're talking about, and that's the elite saying, oh, this is what the people want. It's not true. But when you're talking about winning the middle, you have to say, yeah, if you're on that side, it's not okay. It's not normal. It's not, hey, 50-50, should we hate the gays or should we not hate the gays? No, if you hate people for who they are, you're a bit of a monster. I know you got turned into a monster by right-wing media and propaganda and let's be honest, religion, etc. Okay, but people don't like honesty. So we're stuck,
I don't think
But in terms of the middle, no, I don't want you to think, as every stupid Democrat has done my entire life, it could be, maybe you should hate black people and Latinos and immigrants and gays and all these people. I don't want to offend Republican voters. I don't want to offend them. Okay, so I gotta be a warrior for that, and Anna, you're a warrior for that, and you're an awesome warrior for that.
I know, I direct my ire toward those in power, Cenk. because I believe, look, I mean, like, look at Florida as a perfect example. They elected Obama twice. Look at Florida now, right? Obviously, people can be persuaded, and you give up too easily. Like, you just do. We have policy ideas that are appealing across the aisle, period. But all of the focus by the mainstream Democratic Party is because they're paid by their donors and they don't actually want to push for the economic policies that would be popular. They dive into the culture wars too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this endless, like, you're bad, no, you're bad, you're a terrible person, you're a terrible person. I'm not saying you don't fight the right-wing power players, you absolutely do. But if we're to have anyone outside of our political group be receptive to the popular policy ideas that we have, we can't persuade them by immediately attacking them and writing them off as all bad people. You guys are all bad people, you guys all love crime, you all love this, you all love that. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I disagree with your theory of change. The whole thing about winning over the middle, that is what elections have been about for decades. No, but they have a false middle. Their middle is, bipartisan compromise that we should give billions more to corporations, and that's the middle of the country. That ain't the middle of the country. The middle of the country is an average guy, an average woman working their ass off, barely making it, et cetera, right? So I address the actual middle as opposed to the Democratic Party. Look, here's my solution. And this is what I've been doing to the best of my ability, and often very wrongly, I'm sure, right? But I play both defense and offense. So if you're gonna attack people, we're going to defend them, period. Okay. At the same time, and this is what none of the rest of the Democratic Party do. Bernie does it a little bit. Justice Democrats do it a tiny bit, but Justice Democrats do
tiny.
Yeah.
Okay. What you have to do is play offense on economic issues.
Yes.
Do you want higher wages, or do you want the Republican plan of lower wages? Do you want healthcare, or don't you want healthcare? For God's sake, this is the one thing Anna and I agree most on. Play offense on economic issues. And look, right wing, let me just say this. I don't mind if you hate me. I'm gonna fight you, and you're gonna fight me, okay? On these culture war issues, it probably lasts the rest of our lifetime, okay? But can we just agree on things that are not culture war issues? Don't you want higher wages and healthcare? And I know some of you say, no, not if it means working with a lib. And by the way, some of us say, not if it means working with a bigot, a racist, a homophobe, et cetera, et cetera. So both sides fight the culture wars either now or later, but you have to fight together on economic issues where the people at the top, the donors, are crushing the living crap out of both of us. Let's stop the robbery first, and then we can go back to fighting.
How do you get people to work together when the beginning of that proposal is, we hate you guys, we think you're stupid, we think you love criminals?
They hate us, you think they don't hate us?
No, they do hate us, they do hate us.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is it's okay, hate us, we hate you, but let's work together so we don't get robbed. The guy's walking away with the freaking money. Let's stop the robbery first. So it's just an honest way of dealing with it. Instead of saying like, oh my God, maybe you guys are right about X, Y, or Z.
No, I never said that, Cenk. I never want the straw, okay.
That is a straw man.
That is no, you love straw manning. You love it. I'm trying to be as fair as possible during this conversation. You're intentionally misrepresenting what I'm saying here. Obviously, I don't agree with the hateful rhetoric. I don't like any of it, okay? But it's really interesting to me that when you had a candidate like Obama who ran on hope and change, who ran on economic issues, all of these people who are now enamored with Donald Trump actually voted for Obama. Gee, I wonder why that is. Could it be that in lieu of a candidate that actually represents their economic interests, they just go for the cult of personality who owns the libs? That is what happens. That is our political landscape right now. So we can continue attacking ordinary people that we disagree with, and to be sure, I do disagree with them. But we have to also, more importantly, if you ask me, focus on the systems that has created this mess in the first place. And sometimes I feel like the focus isn't where it needs to be. That's all I'm saying.
All right, super last thing on it. Look, Anna's, again, not wrong about the facts. So Obama, when he came into office, had around an 80% approval rating. So if the whole country was racist, or all Republicans were racist, why was his approval rating that high? Why did he win a whole bunch of red states, right? So if you think the only answer is racism, bigotry, et cetera, you're wrong. The facts do not prove out your thesis, okay?
Right.
So, but if you think that problem doesn't exist, well, you're probably not on the left anyway. Of course it exists, right? And of course it applies to some people, but whether it's the majority or half of Republicans or a third of Republicans, I don't know. But I do know that whatever percentage of Republicans that is, they're winning their primaries, they're winning general elections, and they're passing laws that enforce their hatred of us onto all of society, right? Whereas our side can't play defense or offense. So I'm trying to help on both fronts, but I'm sure very imperfectly so, and it's a good conversation. It'll continue probably for years.
So Michael Brooks had a great quote: "Be kind to people, be ruthless to systems." And that's the crux of this debate, is that, right? Because from Anna's perspective, she feels like Cenk is too hard and too dismissive of right-wing voters who may have been propagandized into believing absolute garbage, and instead of trying to constructively sort of deprogram them and get them out of that, you make them hate you more, and you make them double down more when you say things like Republicans love criminals. Because then they're gonna circle the wagons, they're gonna get defensive, they're gonna say that's not a fair categorization of what I believe. And Anna makes the point, like, I don't know if you saw it in this clip, but she makes the point of like, obviously the argument they would make is not that Donald Trump is a criminal and I like him because he's a criminal. They would argue, no, he's a victim of a witch hunt, and it's the establishment and the deep state targeting him, and they're doing that because he's an outsider, he's not part of the club, and he busts up business as usual and all those things. So that's what they would, to steelman their position, that's what they would say. So I guess I definitely lean more in the pro-Anna direction in this debate, because the way you handle that is to so accurately understand what their position is and then respond to their actual position instead of smugly saying, you just love criminals. And so the way to deconstruct that would be to show this guy isn't an outsider. He's not anti-establishment. He's a billionaire. He's part of the club. All of his policy proposals were pro-establishment. His biggest legislative accomplishment was a tax cut, which was $2 trillion to the wealthy. 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. He ran as the anti-outsourcing guy, but then there were 200,000 jobs that were outsourced under him. So if you steelman the opposition and then address their specific concerns, there's some percentage of them that you're going to make them go, oh, okay, well, that's a fair point. You know, I never thought of it from that perspective. But if you just flippantly and glibly and smugly say, you just love criminals, well, they're going to be like, I hate Cenk Uygur, and you are not being fair, you're not being kind, you're not accurately restating my position to me. And so ultimately, I think Anna's more correct. You know, can you find examples of Republicans who will say, yes, I know Trump did it, but I also still like him. So at least in this specific instance, I like a criminal. Yeah, you'll find some like that, but those are the ones we'd put in the category of TFG, the too far gones. But I guess the debate here is what percentage are actually TFG and what percentage are not, what percentage are savable. To Anna's point, there was, I think, 9 million voters who voted for Obama twice and then voted for Trump. Obviously, with those specific people, you can't say it's the racism, it's the bigotry, it's the xenophobia. Like, that's why they voted for Trump. So, look, it's a complex conversation. I like this debate that they had. To steelman Cenk's position, he would argue, I'm making a point that's mean and tough but true, he would say. And if anything, he could say, I'm sort of trying to give him like a tough love perspective. Like, hey, man, wake up, snap out of it. You love criminals? Is that who you want to be? You know, you say you're a law and order guy, but ultimately you're defending a criminal who there's all the evidence in the world he is a criminal. So it's like, wakey, like snap out of it. And I mean, I guess my only issue with that would be, I just think Anna's approach is more effective. And it's the approach I try to take on this show, right? Which is the real problem are the political elites. Basically 100% of the Republican politicians and like 80 to 85% of the Democratic politicians. Like, that's the problem. The problem is the system. The problem are the incentive structures in the system. And, you know, I may disagree with my neighbor on a whole host of issues, but at the end of the day, if you really get down to it, I think they would honestly say, some conservative neighbor, I just want what's best for everybody. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to be healthy. And I want everybody to feel fulfilled. And so then the question becomes, well, how do we get to that point? Which brings us full circle to where they're both right, which is, look, Florida in the 2020 election voted for Trump over Biden, but 60% of Florida voters voted to raise the minimum wage in a direct ballot initiative. So what that tells you is, once you get down to the specific issues, yeah, the left ideas are overwhelmingly popular. So in other words, it's a colossal failing of Democratic politicians and liberals and leftists. It's a colossal failure for us not to be able to bridge the gap and tell people we are offering exactly what you want anyway, right? If The overwhelming majority want to raise the minimum wage. The overwhelming majority want higher taxes on the rich. The overwhelming majority want universal health care. The overwhelming majority want paid time off. Like, we can go down the list. The overwhelming majority want to get money out of politics and end the corruption. So if on paper, so many people are already with us, then I would say, yes, the onus is on us to sort of deprogram them, defeat the propaganda, and make them understand, like, this is the solution and we can work together on the solution, and all the other stuff is just noise. All the other stuff is just a distraction. You know, the culture war stuff is just, it's intentional. It's to try to get people who would agree and have the same class interest to beat each other's throats while the rich run out the back door with all the money. And so ultimately, I definitely agree more with Anna's position. I think there might be some percentage of Republicans where Cenk's, you know, sort of tough perspective on the Republican voter might actually shake him out of it and wake him up. But I think you'll probably deconvert more people by sort of very carefully treating their arguments, steel manning their perspectives, and then responding to the steel man with facts and with good arguments. And the thing is, like, I think Cenk is a great communicator, and he would be able to steel man a right-wing perspective. He used to be a Republican. He could steel man, a right-wing voter's perspective, and then deconstruct that steel man argument. And by the way, that's also more fun. It is less fun to just straw man your opponent and act like you're just a total idiot and, like, I don't need to take the time to address every concern you have. No, you can do it. And if you do it, you'll have a higher deconversion rate. But I think, you know, ultimately you just do the best you can and take it from there. And so I think I agree more with Anna's perspective. And that's why she got very triggered when Cenk made the point, like, Republicans just love criminals. Because it's like, yeah, then the right will fire back and say, well, you lefties love criminals even more because there's some left-wing activists who are in favor of defund the police. And it's like, if you hear that argument as somebody on the left, you would never accept it. Because you would say, do you even know what that means? Like, have you read any of the literature on defund and what they're actually saying, what they're actually arguing for? And when you get into the specifics, you realize it's not agree or disagree with it. And I don't like the slogan either. It's not a crazy position because they're just saying take a certain percentage of the police budget and put it more towards, like, crisis rescue teams, people who are trained in psychology and psychiatry and can talk people down when they're going through a crisis. In other words, in some instances, maybe the first line of defense shouldn't be somebody showing up with a gun where it raises the stakes and maybe somebody can end up dead. Maybe it should be a mental health professional. Like, that's what people mean when they say defund. And you could straw man it from a right-wing perspective and say, oh, you guys just love criminals. But that's not fair. That's a straw man of the left's position. It's not accurate. You haven't engaged, honestly, with the actual position of the left on that. And so in the same way, we, like, dismiss somebody on the right for being that smug and straw manning left-wing beliefs. The right is going to do that when people on the left do a similar thing. And so we have to be better than that. We have to rise above that. We have to have an honest discourse and dialogue and sort of try to get people to where you're at. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But at least then at the end of the day, you can say, hey, man, I engaged honestly 100% of the time. I got into all the details and all the specifics, all the nooks and crannies. I didn't at any time, not treat the other position seriously. And so I think that's the best approach. So I'm definitely more team Anna on this front. And I think if Cenk adopts, Anna's perspective on this and implements it, I actually think he'd be really, really good at converting gigantic swaths of people. I mean, he probably already has converted gigantic swaths of people. I'm certain of it. But I think he could deconvert even more by taking that more careful, nuanced approach where you steel man the right-wing voter perspective and then react to it and try to convince them. But, again, final point, and the total point of agreement between all of us is that you have to be ruthless to the system and ruthless to the elites. Ruthless. Because they're the problem. Even though they're the problem because of the incentive structure and how corrupt the system is. You go after the system, you go after the corrupt politicians, you go after the elites, no holds barred, and everybody else treat carefully and treat with respect and treat with somebody that in a year they might be totally on your side, because they might be. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.